Hello, and welcome back to the Appraisal Doctor. This is Dr. Aria A. Wilson, PhD in Urban Planning, Certified Residential Appraiser. I am here for all your appraisal questions, and if it's your first time here on this channel, please, I hope you will subscribe, and I am here to answer all your appraisal questions, so let's get into it. The Appraisal Doctor, we try to tackle questions that people have generally of appraisals. Now, today's question is, why does my property value decrease? Okay, so in tackling this question, let's keep it simple by focusing on the property, meaning the residential property, your house. Okay? What causes the value on a house to decrease? To be honest with you, the value on homes, residential properties, usually are determined by the market behavior, meaning the demand and the supply. How the demand and the supply interacts will determine the price of that property. It will determine the value of that property. So let's start with the economic factors. There are some economic factors that do exist that will affect your property value and has the power to decrease it. Economic factors include interest rates. Let's start there. If the interest rates are high, it means that mortgages are less affordable. Most people buy their home with a mortgage. Most people don't buy their homes cash. And in order to afford a mortgage, the interest rate has to be affordable. So if there is an increase in interest rate, it will affect anyone's ability to purchase a home. It will affect most people's ability to afford to pay the mortgage that's affiliated with that increased interest rate. And if one cannot afford the mortgage, then one cannot qualify to purchase the home. And if you cannot purchase the home, it means that the level of demand will decrease. So many people will not be buying homes because they can't afford to get a home loan. They can't afford the mortgage because the interest rate on the mortgage is so high that the mortgage payments are unaffordable. So that's the most impacting factor under the economic factors. So the interest rate being high is a major one. Another factor under the economic would be recession. If there is a recession, it will affect interest rates as well. So it's like a domino effect. One thing affecting the other, affecting interest rates, and we know what happens there in causing your property to lose value. Now, let's pick upon the fact that property losing value, residential property losing value, is connected to market behavior. Let's talk about the market behavior for simplicity, considering the interest rates that we just spoke about, a recession that we just mentioned. If the interest rates have increased, what is going to happen is that the demand is going to be low. What happens when there is a low demand in the market area, in the market sector of a residential property? What happens here is that you have less people buying and there is still a supply of homes. So the developers are creating homes hoping that people will buy, but because people can't afford to buy anymore, the demand has fallen and there are more homes for sale than there are people buying. What happens here? There is a glut on the market. What do we call a glut? When there is a lot more being supplied than people buying. What happens there is that the suppliers get desperate and the prices start falling because instead of being able to sell a home for say $200,000, they can't find a purchaser who can afford that home at $200,000. So there is less demand, and the suppliers are fighting for the very few people who can afford to buy. What ends up happening is the persons selling start lowering the price to meet the affordability of those people who are actually buying in the market. So it now becomes a buyer's market. The buyer has the bargaining power. The buyer has the say in the market, and they can determine what the property values are. As a seller, that is not good news for you. And that answers your question: what can cause my property to lose value? What can cause my property to have a lower value? And that's honestly, that's the biggest factor, the economic factor. Then we can move on to the physical factor. Now, physical factors can include many things that you can control and other things that you can't. Now, under the physical factors, we're speaking about the property physically being affected by something that causes the value to be less. It could be something as simple as deferred maintenance. What does that mean? If your house needs to be painted every 5 years and you do not paint it every 5 years, then your paint is going to start peeling. When potential buyers come to look at your home that you may be selling and it has chipped paint, that is a deterrent. If there's another home in the community that is well maintained and yours isn't, that property will go for a higher value than yours. Will they buy your property? Yes, they will, but they're going to offer less money. So that's an example of how the physical can affect the value. The physical condition, the physical age. Now, your property can be getting old, but because you take care of it, you paint it when it's to be painted, you change the roof when it's to be changed, you're doing particular things to the physical nature of the property to maintain it, it keeps the value in check. So if you don't maintain your property, long and short, it will make your property less attractive and less competitive in a market where it is to be sold. Another physical factor that can affect your property can be a factor that you cannot control. An example of that is a natural disaster. For example, when there was Hurricane Harvey in Texas, there were many properties that were affected, either by the flooding in the community that affected all those properties, or it might have affected your property that, you lost your roof, there was water coming in all the way up to 5, 6, 7, possibly 10 inches, which destroyed the foundation of your home, the flooring, the plumbing, almost everything has to be gutted. That's a physical effect on your property that is out of your control, that is caused by a natural disaster, and inadvertently will cause your property value to decrease. Now, there are many things in place to look out for property owners that would have been in such a position, but the point of the matter is to answer the question, what makes my property less valuable? What makes my property value less or decrease? That's another reason why your property can decrease. Now, moving on to government factors, political factors. There might be a political environment where there might be political leadership that might be more averse to, say, the low-income population being able to afford a house. So they might put factors in place, they might put subsidies in place to help lower-income people to be able to afford a house. And I think that is why they have the FHA, where the government has housing assistance for people who qualify. So that's another thing that can affect your value being less. If your property is being sold and there is no financial assistance for some members of the population, say low income earners, it will decrease the number of people who would fall in the affordability bracket in order to purchase your home. So if there are less people buying, chances are your property value will decrease. Going right back to the whole demand and supply, it is going to make your property value less when you have less people, a subset of people who will not be able to afford your property because there are not enough government subsidies. So that's an example of a political environment that can discourage the ownership of homes and inadvertently causing property value to be less. If you are in a residential area and you are close towards the end of a subdivision, for example, and there is no a new development at the corner for, say, a mall, a shopping strip, a supermarket, or whatever it is, but it's commercial, it's no longer residential. If this is happening in your neighborhood, it is called a neighborhood change, a land use change. That can affect your property and the properties on your street and the properties within that subdivision. Usually for the residential uses, people are quiet, people like their privacy, and they do not want too much traffic through their neighborhoods, and they do not want a commercial tone to their neighborhood. This can affect your value as residential becoming lower because people who would want to buy residential properties will stop looking in your subdivision to buy properties because they have noticed the neighborhood change and the values will inadvertently fall or decrease. That is my final factor. I hope I have answered your question this evening. Stick around. Next week, we are going to answer another question, and I am here, the appraisal doctor, to answer those questions. If you like the content of this video, please give it a thumbs up, give me a good comment, and subscribe. See you next week on the Appraisal Doctor. Thank you for watching.